Okay, Fred, and our final two articles were about one from the New York Times that actually talked about estrogen disruptors and the high incidence of breast cancer, and it was associated with how there's many chemicals out there in the environment, and all this exposure that we're having is starting to be linked to a number of studies about early puberty for women, and that's increasing the risk of breast cancer, such as pesticides, PCB'S, and other chemicals. They've actually categorized everything as an endocrine disruptor, and we know those are in the environment. And I'd like you to speak to that, and also speak to the endocrine disruptors that people actually eat in their lifestyle. That, you know, we obviously from the Healthy Journey ask them to leave out, but kind of educate people on that basis, if you could, please.
Well, all the endocrine disruptors that people are eating today that have an effect on breast cancer, soy products are kind of like a double-edged sword. They contain isoflavones, and two of the isoflavones are adenosine and diazine. And in some respects, they can be used to advantage. But when you're eating the whole problem is when you're eating the standard American diet, there's a tremendous amount of endocrine disruptors that have an effect on female organs, not only her breast but her ovaries. So one of the reasons that we try to get people into a lifestyle change, knowingly and unknowingly, we're covering most of these endocrine disruptors by getting a person to change their lifestyle and go into a plant-based diet. For instance, you know, we consume a tremendous amount of dairy products in this country. Now, dairy products that come from a cow, they have naturally occurring growth hormones that are meant to bring a cow to a body mass of someplace between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds in maybe 6 months or a year. I don't know the exact time frame on that, but those naturally occurring growth hormones that are in the milk definitely have an effect on a woman's breast and her ovaries. So I've seen so many people that I saw this was a factor, and what helped them is when they left out the dairy products, and you don't need the dairy products to have healthy bones. That's another situation that exists in this country. If that was true, we wouldn't be consuming more dairy products than the whole rest of the world combined and have more osteoporosis and breast cancer. Breast cancer is one of the leading causes of death in women today, and the best way to treat breast cancer is to avoid it completely. And all these endocrine disruptors, they're in the processed food. They're in the chemicals, the pesticides that are spread on our food. They mimic estrogen in the human body. You want to try to avoid these things. And it's not easy in our society, but if you get educated and you focus on this, it's not that hard to do. I encourage people with lifestyle changes based on what you leave out. What you leave out is the key. There are people that are eating foods, diets that they think are healthy. They're ingesting plenty of estrogen disruptors and don't even realize it. So the key is really to knowingly leave out the foods that interfere with a healthy physiology. To start from the point where you're leaving out the processed food. To eat as much fresh food and raw food as you possibly can. Whatever you are eating, make sure the hormones are not in that food. There's so much, even with people that are into eating animal protein, there's a tremendous difference between grass-fed beef and organically grown beef. People think organically grown beef is better. It really isn't than grass-fed beef, where the grass has not had the pesticide sprayed on the grass. Now, I'm not pushing people to eat animal protein. I'm not telling everybody that they have to avoid it completely to be healthy, because that is not true. Now, it's going to upset a lot of people, but that's so be it. The key is to eat a diet that has no processed food, to avoid hormones and pesticides, and you will be avoiding the endocrine disruptors. The key is to eat real food, and there's a whole bunch of other factors where we're not going into now, we will be going into, like getting adequate amount of rest, and not eating late at night, not eating too early in the morning, in spite of what's being said to eat early in the morning. That's another, I believe, is another mistake.
Yeah, Fred, this New York Times article, Cancer from the Kitchen, talked about how women in Asia have low rates of breast cancer.
Absolutely.
But women in the United States don't enjoy that same benefit.
Absolutely. And the strange thing about it, women in Asia are actually eating more soy products. That's why I say it's a double-edged sword. Well, remember, women in Asia, especially the studies done with the peasant people, because they're eating a lot of fresh vegetables, even though now in Asia, because they used to use human waste as fertilizer, they cooked a lot of their food because they were worried about parasite infestation. So that's another thing people have to take a good look at here. So females in Asia are getting a lot less breast cancer, a lot less ovarian cancer, and it definitely has to do with their lifestyle. They're certainly not eating a lot of processed food. They're not eating some of the box food and canned food that we're eating out there. Everything is freshly prepared. Even the soy products they're eating, like tofu, they eat a certain amount of soy products in Asia, but they don't overdo that. And there's a direct correlation to all the other variables that they're eating. In general, it's a better lifestyle where it helps them to avoid getting as much breast cancer we're getting in our society. And they don't consume dairy. That's the big thing. I think that's one of the big factors.
Yeah, Fred, just related to our previous video about pancreatic cancer, the nitrogenous compounds in red meat that are in dairy, that are in processed meat, definitely contribute to a higher risk of prostate cancer, but speak to it about breast cancer also.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a factor in breast cancer. There's no two ways about it. There are studies that show that the more dairy consumption that people have, the more problems. It's no good to eat too much dairy. There's no two ways about it. And it does have an effect on breast cancer. I know a couple cases very close to me where people ate a good diet and they ate a lot of cheese, and I definitely saw in studies that showed that eating dairy is not the greatest thing in the world as far as breast cancer is concerned. And if you take a good look at the China project, T. Colin Kay, he didn't focus on that, but it was very obvious in the China project where he did an epidemiological study, showed that the people ate, there was a direct correlation to the foods a person ate in one area of China. When they moved to another area of China, even though it was 50 miles away, and they changed their diet, it was able to specifically show different types of food, the effect it had on the human physiology and how people develop different diseases. And of course, T. Colin Campbell came to the conclusion that a vegan-vegetarian diet, based on the 10-year study done in China, was a healthier diet. Now, a lot of people question that study because it didn't substantiate what they were saying, but you can't deny the facts of that a 10-year epidemiological study done over a large population in China is definitely indicative of, shows you that a diet that's high in protein is not the best type of diet to have a healthy, long lifestyle.
Great. Thanks a lot, Fred. And check out the blog on www.fredbishyforhealth.com. And have a good holiday.